Testing 1, 2, 3. 3, 2, 1. What the heck is bothering me? Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Yep, yep. All right. Welcome everybody to this Christmas Eve edition of the 2020 Jimmy Lunsford Jamboree Festival online. This is your host with the most, Brother Ron, also known as R2C2H2 the Artivist. Just playing my own tune, tooting my own horn, as they say. And, it's kind of like similar. You saw Mon Ray's Black Bottom. That's a cornet. What I was playing on is like it's a cousin to the trumpet. A lot of the early jazz musicians played on cornets, like Louis Armstrong before he made a switch to trumpet. He was on cornet. Buddy Bolden cornet, King Oliver cornet. I believe that was a cornet that Chadwick Boseman was playing in Mons Rainey Black Bottom because a little bit, it's made differently. It's a little bit more compact, shorter. But I'm just telling myself how to play. It is my own music. I love my sound. I like playing in the cemetery because nobody can complain how bad I am or whatever. So it's like I like eating food in the cemetery because nobody asks you for a bite of your chicken sandwich, from Popeyes, but whatever. But anyway, I hope everybody's doing well out there in this season. Very interesting, like a surreal holiday season right now. I want to thank everybody who's been supporting the We All Be movement over the years. Your donations, your care, your support, your input is very much appreciated. I don't always answer everybody's comments and or emails and texts and phone calls, voicemails, but I want to appreciate y'all. I do read comments, and I thank you for taking the time out your schedule to make part of my experience a part of your experience. It means a lot to me, man, because sometimes I could be down and out, and I get a text message or an email or a phone call or a donation, or whatever, lift my spirits and keep me going. And 2020 is definitely a year of testing limits, of extremes, of endurance. I pride myself now. Like I've been working out because, this year, man, like this is like a purge season going on. A lot of folks ain't gonna make it. Some of the toughest of the tough have answered the call to go home. A lot of Memphis giants have left us. Memphis music greats, people like Dr. Herman Green and Noki Taylor. These guys just left the building, left the band room, left the concert stage. concert hall. I mean, these guys made an important contribution to the Memphis sound, and their sound would never be forgotten. Names may come and go, but sounds remain, right? So in a lot of ways, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, to give honor to those unsongs, those people who made an important contribution to Black music, to culture, to Black excellence. So this is why we do what we do. And tonight we're talking about my dear Jegna. I call my mentors Jegna because, the origin of the word mentor means something else. But Jegna is more African centered, more people oriented, more humanity centered and theme. Mr. Emerson Abel Jr., I can't believe he's been gone for 5 years in the mortal coil, but he is truly a righteous ancestor, a man who is probably the biggest Jimmy Luncifer fan who ever lived. Jimmy Luncifer, he was a big fan of Jimmy Luncifer. Not only that, he was a disciple. Did I say right? Disciple of the Jimmy Luncifer tradition in terms of being a great educator in music. He's arguably the greatest high school band director that the city of Memphis ever produced. And his father went to Manassas High School back in the day when Jimmy Luncifer was a band director there, gym teacher, coach, all that stuff. So his father was a big fan of Jimmy Luncifer, not only as a musician or as an educator, but as a man. Because Jimmy Luncifer was a real man. He was an alpha, Black male, hetero, loved women, loved his people, loved his music, and loved to teach. So Mr. Abel picked that up from him. Like Mr. Abel would tell me about the time when Jimmy Luncifer would come back to Manassas to have music clinics for the kids and the Rhythm Bombers. That was a Manassas high school band. And Mr. Abel told me how much he was impressed by a tenor saxophone man from Kansas City named Joe Thomas. And, Mr. Abel became a tenor saxophonist, became a music educator. And he helped a lot of Black kids to go to college through music. Baba Dick Gregory talked about this on a couple of interviews about how he would encourage young parents to start teaching their Black kids on a music instrument when they're young. Because he was saying by them learning a music instrument, it could guarantee them a free college education. Dick Gregory said, he said, I tell the parents that, you start your kid out on some type of instrument, it pays off in the end because they get a full ride somewhere to play in the band, but also get an education. And Mr. Abel kind of had that blueprint as well, where he would take students and encourage them, whether it be Manassas or Westwood or Northside, whatever he was at. I believe it was Northside he taught it at one point in his long Memphis music education career. Also, he taught college bands. This is why he became one of the co-founders and architect behind what is now known as the Southern Heritage Classic. That's the fall classic, the HBCU football fall classic that pits Jackson State from Mississippi against Tennessee State from Tennessee. Tennessee State was Mr. Abel, or is Mr. Abel Jr. Jr.'s alma mater. But Mr. Abel had the networks with the band directors, the extensive network. He's able to pull that off. Actually created a Southern Heritage Classic in his classroom. Now, they haven't had the last 2 seasons. One was rained out, real bad weather. And then, of course, the COVID stuff happened this year. But I'm looking forward to the one next year because, prime time, Deion Sanders is the head football coach for Jackson State now. So it'll be interesting to see prime time in the city of Good Old Memphis, Tennessee next year, 2021. I am hoping that things will be brighter and better for a lot of us in 2021. But it's a blessing still to be around in the game, to be honest with you, in the game of life. So without further ado, I want to play my tribute. Or rather, before I play my tribute to Mr. Abel, I want to play a great song called I Remember Clifford that was done in the memory of Clifford Brown, the great jazz trumpeter, hard bop trumpeter from the 50s, who passed away tragically in a car accident at the age of 26, I believe. I believe he was 26 years young, not mistaken, back in 1956. So they did a song called I Remember Clifford. That's a jazz standard now. I'm going to play that in honor of Mr. Abel, as well as those past. And speaking of those past, it is very important to honor our ancestors because they are the blueprint to a lot of things. They can provide their life, can provide a blueprint to how to live a purpose-driven life to the fullest. So the ancestors I refer to, give homage to. Them men right there, great, brilliant Memphis man, jazz man extraordinaire, jazz man extraordinaire. The one closest to your screen, that brother right there, to my right, and I'm the dude with the beard and the head. That's the one and only Dr. Herman Green. Dr. Herman Green was a great saxophone man. Memphis produced a lot of great jazz saxophonists. A lot of great ones came out of Memphis. You know, Memphis got this reputation for being blues and rock and roll, but a lot of great jazz musicians came out of Memphis. And really what's interesting about the Memphis jazz men, a lot of them came from great music programs like at Manassas High School, Melrose, Booker T. Washington High School, Douglas, the list goes on and on. But Dr. Herman Green was an interesting guy. This guy played with Miles Davis and even Coltrane back in the day. And you kind of think, hey, man, these must be tall tales because guy left Memphis when he was young, hit the road. I think he was in the service at one point. But he even allegedly encountered Charlie Parker in Kansas City, who was impressed by his playing and asked him where he was from. And he said he was from Memphis, and Bird basically said, well, they got a lot of good musicians down there, a lot of good schooling. Because Charlie Parker, I love Charlie Parker. Just Google Charlie Parker interviews. He sounds so much like a college professor, even though he jumped out of high school. The man was brilliant. He said, you got a lot of good schooling down in Memphis. That makes sense. And Charlie Parker's dad was from Memphis, you know. So, I mean, Memphis, man, something in the water down here that produced these phenomenal musicians. But Dr. Herman Green played with everybody back in the day. There's actually a picture on his Facebook page of him with Coltrane talking. A young Dr. Herman Green talking with the one and only John Coltrane. So, I mean, I guess he was telling the truth. I love musicians. Then the guy to my left, the white guy, the brother from another mother, Blue Eyed Soul, my man, Dr. John Bass, director of Mike Herb Institute, really a trailblazing innovator in bringing homage to forgotten Memphis jazz greats. You know, he was able to bring Charles Lloyd back in 2012. Charles Lloyd did not play in Memphis since 1964 before that time when he was a sideman with the great Julian Cannonball Adderley. And Dr. John Bass had the foresight to bring this man back to Memphis in 2012. It took him decades for somebody to ask him back. Like he said, I asked him, like, why he haven't come back before 2012? He said, because nobody never asked me to come back. And that's saying a lot. Charles Lloyd is a renowned jazz musician, renowned, brilliant, one of the last men standing. You understand? So one of the giants among jazz as well as Memphis music. But that guy in the black jacket is none other than Harold Mayburn, the legendary jazz pianist out of Manassas. You know, Miles Davis had to talk about Harold Mayburn and his friends coming out of Manassas. He kept on talking about back in the early 60s, he kept on getting all these jazz guys from Memphis, but they all came from Manassas High School. People like Harold Mayburn and George Coleman and Frank Stroger. He made mention of the great young trumpet player Booker Little, who died at the age of 23 back in 1961. And he said, what they doing down there to get these guys out of this one school? We're not just talking about a city or a section of a town or a region. You're talking about one school produced some of the greatest jazz musicians of the mid to latter 20th century and beyond. That's one school. And it's back in the 50s. And their band director was Matthew Garrett, the father of Dee Dee Bridgewater, another jazz great from Memphis, straight out of Memphis. So this history needs to be known and taught. But you know, I encounter a lot of Memphis music educators that are not aware of this history. And they're teaching kids, they're in front of kids, teaching them. Well, if these kids knew this stuff as they were going through these music programs or coming out of these neighborhoods that produce these phenomenal black people. We like superheroes and sheroes, but we got to know our history. We got to know our origin story. And this is why I do what I do with Jimmy Lunsford, Jamboree Festival. It's not just about one man. It's about a people. It's about a movement. It's about us. It's a story about us and where we come from and who we are and how we can stand tall on being from where we are and where we're going. Never lose sight. Keep the faith. Hold on. It's coming. So these guys represent the best of that. And Harold Mayburn was the piano player for Lee Morgan. He was there that night at Slugs when Lee Morgan was killed by his common law wife, Helen Morgan. There's a great documentary about that. And Harold Mayburn was there that night. He was playing piano for Lee Morgan. Lee Morgan, one of the greatest jazz trumpet players of all time. He was my favorites, man. Amazing. The Sidewinder, Google Sidewinder, or YouTube Sidewinder by Lee Morgan. Search for the New Land. Man, that man was brilliant. I mean, we lost Clifford, but we still had Lee Morgan. But unfortunately, Lee Morgan died young. He died, I believe, at the Jesus age of 33. His common law wife shot him on stage. So Harold Mayburn was there that night, a Memphis guy. And a lot of times he was reluctant to talk about it. It was very traumatic for him, of course, but he was there that night when Lee Morgan got shot. He was a witness to history and tragedy. But he made history as a great musician. Had the honor of first hearing Harold Mayburn because of Dr. John Bass, that white man next to him, brought him and the great George Coleman to play. And Miss George Coleman, one of the last living people to play on one of B.B. King's most important early tours from back in the day. Him and Floyd Newman, another great saxophone man, baritone saxophone player, and also Jegna to Isaac Hayes. Isaac Hayes used to play for Floyd Newman over at the Plantation Inn in West Memphis, Arkansas. Very important place in terms of American music history. You know, the Newborns, Calvin Newborn, the great guitar player, the one that Elvis mimicked, and also his brother, Phineas Newborn. From the great Newborn family, got connections to the Plantation Inn. Also, Mr. Abel, the guy we're talking about tonight, played gig at places like that as well. But like I said, there's so much history here, man. And I'm just glad that I had a chance to counter greatness firsthand. But yeah, I heard, Harold Mayburn and George Coleman play. Said to be back in, what year was that? That was 2013. It's like late 2013. Dr. John Bass brought them to play a concert and do a musician clinic for the young people. And yeah, so Dr. John Bass is a true unsung. He's a white man that cares about the music. And he does his part to promote it by utilizing the resources at the Mike Curb Institute. And I look forward to work with him next year. The Mike Curb Institute to do some of this Jimmy Lunsford stuff, because it's not a moment, it's a movement. And I'm glad I got the wherewithal. The ancestors gave me their blessing to tell these stories by any means necessary. So, yeah, we lost Harold Mayburn last year. We lost the guy in the black jacket with the striped shirt, and we lost Dr. Herman Green this year. We lost several Memphis musicians of note. And I just want to give a shout out to them. And also another person I want to give a shout out to that we lost, like I said, and we lost. So I'm just now realizing how many people I lost this year. I had no idea that so many people that I was connected to some type of way. Some I knew well, some I didn't know that well. We encountered each other through interviews and whatnot. They dying. People are dropping dead. Just love on your people while you can, man. Love on yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be thoughtful. Be generous. Be kind and loving and patient towards yourself. That's the great Noki Taylor who's sitting down. We had did a surprise birthday. It was not a surprise birthday party, but they did a birthday party in honor of him at his nursing home where he was staying at. And the guy with the saxophone is our homecoming prince for this year, the great Dr. Alvin McKinney, the Prime Minister of Joyful Jazz, a very brilliant musician, and also a fellow Overton High School alum. Like when he was going to Overton High, the mascot was the Rebel, like the Johnny Rebel. When I went to Overton High School, the mascot became the Wolverine. So we both alum, but he's a Rebel and I'm a Wolverine. And there's Noki Taylor, a great trumpet player out of Memphis, played with a lot of greats and stacks in other places. Just passed away not too long ago. But this is last year, his birthday party at the nursing home he was staying at. And I had a chance to record that concert and also award him a Jimmy Lunsford Legacy Award for a lifetime dedicated to excellence in music and music education. So, I mean, it's so many of them passing away. And I just thank God I had a chance to meet with these guys and give them their flowers while they were here. So with that said, we're going to move on. Going to play this tribute, I Remember Clifford, by the great trumpet man, Ralph Collier. And then we'll move on to the Mr. Abel tributes on We All Be. And thank y'all for being very patient with me. This is Christmas Eve. This Christmas, being very patient. And I feel the love in the air. And y'all know that the best is yet to come. And Brother Ron said, what people say, what about all the other shows you're going to do? We got a lot of shows lined up for you all. I have some shows lined up for you all. Have no fear. The shows are coming. I know y'all want all that drama and that juicy stuff. I got that coming. We're going to close out the year real strong. We're closing out the year real strong. And I look forward to, being a service to you all with amplified blessings in the year 2021. But let's keep it moving. Let's play this tribute, and then we'll move on to the Mr. Emerson Abel tributes. And thank y'all once again for tuning into We All Be, News Free Dixie for the 21st century.
Remember when we are in our libation ceremonies to call out the names of Jimmy Lunsford, Buddy Bolden, Phil Journal. Let's keep the memories alive as we pour the water in our libation ceremonies, okay? Now we're going to go a little bit higher and get another salute from Mr. Journal, from none other than Brother Ralph Collier again, as he shares with us, I remembered Clifford. All right. Let's give him a hand.
Had my mic muted, y'all. And that was Ralph Collier from last year's Jimmy Lunsford Legacy Homecoming Court or Jimmy Lunsford Festival, Jamboree Festival Homecoming Court celebration from last year in honor of the late Phil Joyner Jr., another great high school band director. But unfortunately, he didn't have the longevity of years as a Mr. Emerson Abel Jr. He passed away that same year that we honor him. Like he confirmed that he was, pleased to be honored, and then he died of cancer, a fast and aggressive form of cancer. He passed away within a matter of months after agreeing to be our homecoming court prince. So that was done in his honor, but I thought it was very fitting for a man like Mr. Emerson Abel Jr. Although he looked to be 84 years young, he still, gave so much to us as Black people, as in music. I mean, he just was a very gifted man. But moving on, I want to play a tribute I did of Mr. Emerson Abel Jr. 5 years ago after he died. It's my eulogy of Mr. Emerson Abel Jr. And then we'll play some other tributes from other people who knew, loved, and respected Mr. Emerson Abel Jr. He was truly one of a kind. So thank you all for being patient, and know that the best is yet to come. And we're going to keep it moving on We All Be News Free Dixie for the 21st century.
This is Judge Joe Brown, and we're listening to We All Be News Free Dixie for the 21st century.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, scholars and laymen, boys and girls, the initiated as well as the uninitiated. This is Brother Ron of We All Be News, Radio, and TV. This is a special podcast. I'm just going to give a shout out to the one and only, the late, great Mr. Emerson Abel Jr. That's Mr. Emerson Abel Jr., a good friend of the We All Be movement, who passed away June 27, 2015. October 21st, 2015 would have been his 85th birthday. Mr. Emerson Abel is arguably the greatest marching band director, music teacher that we ever produced out of the city of good abode. That's Memphis, Tennessee. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, scholars and laymen, boys and girls, Mr. Emerson Abel Jr. arguably is the greatest band director ever produced by the Memphis City Schools. Mr. Emerson Abel Jr., of course, was born October 21st, 1930. That's when he made his debut into this world, and the world was never the same. Had the chance to work on several projects with Mr. Abel, which were devoted to recognizing one of his greatest heroes, the late, great James Melvin Lunsford, also known as Mr. Jimmy Lunsford, the guy who actually started music education in the city schools in Memphis back in the 20s as a volunteer while he was teaching at Manassas High School. That's Mr. Emerson Abel's alma mater, which he ended up teaching starting in the late 50s all the way up into the 80s. But Jimmy Lunsford started that, and Mr. Abel spent the rest of his adult life trying to get recognition from Mr. Lunsford. And Mr. Abel would tell me stories about how Mr. Lunsford would perform at his high school when he was in town to play concert dates. He'll give free concerts to the kids at Manassas High School. Mr. Abel will open up for Mr. Lunsford as a member of the Rhythm Bombers. That's the Manassas Rhythm Bombers will open up for Mr. Lunsford. And Mr. Abel told me how Mr. Lunsford will also have workshops for the musicians, the young musicians, learn from the older musicians in the band. And he told me how he was so influenced by Joe Thomas, the great tenor sax man for Mr. Lunsford from Kansas City,
home of the great saxophone gods like Lester Young and Charlie Parker and Ben Webster and so many others. But Mr. Abel said he was influenced by Joe Thomas and the Jimmy Lunsford Band, the tenor sax man, and also about Mr. Lunsford, the way he carried himself, a true gentleman, a true visionary, a true humanitarian, a true and great friend to Black people. And Mr. Abel was a true and great friend to Black people as he supported that mission of teaching the world how to love beautiful things through the education of music education. So how did I meet Mr. Abel? Well, Mr. Abel was interesting. It's kind of like a full circle story. I remember back in the late summer of 2007, I called Mr. Abel after I seen an article written by our friend, Mr. Preston Lauterbach, about Jimmy Lunsford, entitled My Blue Heaven, about the lack of recognition that Jimmy Lunsford's incredible legacy was not receiving a lot of recognition in Memphis. And one of the people that Preston interviewed was Mr. Emerson Abel. And he struck me as somebody that was very passionate, very committed to making sure that his hero get his proper due, regardless how late it was. And so I found his number in the phone book, and I did a cold call, as they call it in the sales world, a cold call. And I told him, about who I was a little bit. And he said something to this. It was interesting. Mr. Abel had a way of, he was very gifted with using words. Let's put it that way. Well, anyway, it's kind of like confrontational, sort of like very aggressive, this guy on the phone. And so I kind of like was surprised by his, by his response. And then all of a sudden he saw that I was serious about doing some type of tribute to Mr. Lunsford. And so he started talking to me. I guess it was a way of Mr. Abel. He catch people off guard by how he, talked. They make sure, try to size them up and see what they was about. And I guess I passed the litmus test. Come to find out that my father, Ron Hurd Sr., my sperm donor, he went to school actually with his middle son, Tony Abel, Antoine Abel. They both went to UT, University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and they both pledged Alpha. And quite possibly, I believe that actually, when I was a little baby, probably visited with Mr. Abel. That's how things come together. It's funny how the universe works. This guy that I'm cold calling, I actually might have met when I was a little kid, when I was a baby. So, this is back in 2007. So he connected with me, put me in connection with some people. We ended up doing a thing at Manassas High School, which he was a part of. And I'm glad. And he saw that I was serious about what I was doing. And so we've really been friends ever since that time, since 2007, visiting with Mr. Abel, talking to him on the phone. Him put me in touch with people who might want to talk to me about, Jimmy Lunsford, about Memphis music. Him sending me letters in the mail. He just had a beautiful handwriting. Mr. Abel was a true Renaissance man. He could do it all. He was in his younger days, he was like one of the best swimmers and divers in the state of Tennessee. He was a diver, award-winning diver and swimmer at Tennessee State University. So he could swim his ass off. And he could play that saxophone like nobody's business. He had one of the best and most beautiful tones I ever heard on saxophone in my life. So, Mr. Abel had all these gifts, and also he had beautiful handwriting. He was a calligrapher. I call him a calligrapher. He had beautiful handwriting. So to receive a letter from Mr. Abel was really to receive a work of art. And now on top of that, too, he was a tremendous visual artist. Just look at his work. Incredible work. He could do things with shoe polish and ink pens that I could never seen anybody do. Mr. Abel was just this incredible. He could be intense, but he was very loving. He could be a blunt. He could be gruff with the language, but he was a very beautiful person, man, inside and out. A very giving person. I believe the reason why he might have been so like rough and gruff a lot of times and used a lot of explicatives, cursing like a sailor. He can make Dick Gregory blush the way he cursed, is because he was a very sensitive soul. He cared so deeply. In a lot of ways, it's like he cared too much. Like he was really deeply concerned about the condition of his people. He wanted to give the best he had. He really believed in empowering his fellow man and helping those in need. You know, he's the type of person probably would give his last dollar out of his wallet if he saw you was truly in need. So that was like a beautiful spirit he was. And, you know, he wasn't everybody cup of tea because people get too caught up on the superficial. Like they get too caught up in what he said, how he talk or how he act. But it's not, to me, about what he says, how he says it. It's not what he...
Here we go. 1, 2, 3, go.
If I can't talk verbally to you, he does is how he does it. Like when Jimmy Lunsford, one of those famous songs, it ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. It ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. It ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. Okay? So Mr. A was the type of person. So, man, he was a phenomenal artist all around. He was this artistic soul. Artistic to the bone. And it's part of his pedigree. Because I remember he told me his grandma used to play piano for the great blues singer Alberta Hunter. And his family got a deep, rich tradition in vaudeville in the entertainment history of this country. So Mr. Abel had like encyclopedic knowledge about, you know, the music business, about music history, about, you know, black history. I mean, the man was very brilliant. He was a scholar, it's an intellect. He was an activist. He was a visionary. And he actually, like I said, he was probably the greatest band leader the city of Memphis ever seen or produced. And that says something because, you know, the tradition was started by the great Jimmy Lunsford, who arguably had the greatest swing band of all time. You know, and we were working on some things to bring that to light, to bring him more recognition. But it was from Mr. Abel, just getting that brass note for Jimmy Lunsford would not have been possible because he'd been championing Jimmy Lunsford for decades in the city before I even came along in 2007. And, you know, everything's about timing. But, you know, he really saw something in me. He was very encouraging. No, I picked up trumpet in college, you know, and he was very encouraging to my trumpet playing, you know, whatever. But no, as I think about it, times past, I might pick that back up again, you know, because, you know, life is what it is. Life is interesting. Life is strange. Had a chance to talk to one of Mr. Abel's good friend, the jazz great Charles Lloyd, who was also an alum of Manassas High School from the 1950s, the great era before Mr. Abel came on the scene. Now imagine, you know, right before Mr. Abel became the band leader for Manassas High School, 1957, the previous band leader was Matthew Garrett, who is the father of Dee Dee Bridgewater, the jazz great Grammy-winning singer. Dee Dee Bridgewater was born in Memphis. Her father was Matthew Garrett, who was the band director of Manassas High School during that rich golden era where Miles Davis had to talk about it in his autobiography. A lot of his sideman was coming from Memphis, not only from Memphis, but they was coming from that one particular school, Manassas High School. People like George Curlman and Harold Mayburn, people like Frank Stroger, people like Hank Crawford, the great saxophone titan who was Ray Charles' band director for a number of years. Booker Little, the jazz trumpet titan, Booker Little, who tragically passed away at the age of 23 on October 5th, 1961, is also an alum of Manassas High School. And they all came out during this period. Charles Lloyd, jazz titan, still going strong at 77 years young, came out of Manassas High School. These are the type of people that Manassas High School produced just in the 1950s. And we're not even talking about the entire school system of the music greats that changed American history. You know, I mean, this is Memphis City Schools, y'all. And this is one school in particular, Manassas High School. Mr. Abel was also the high school band director for Isaac Hayes. And it was also an infamous incident in the annals of Manassas history where Mr. Abel actually kicked Isaac Hayes out of the marching band because he couldn't read music. And Mr. Abel ended up working for Isaac Hayes at Stax during for the Isaac Hayes movement. He was his saxophonist. He was his arranger, helped out with a lot of stuff. And also he played at the iconic Stax concert in Los Angeles as well. So Mr. Abel lived this life that was incredible. He played for everybody, with everybody. He could tell you stories. And I was blessed enough to spend hours talking to him about his life and about these stories and to archive some of this history and hopefully make it available to the greater public sometime in the very near future. But in my opinion, in my honest opinion, I believe Mr. Abel was a great man. He was a great man. There's not many great men. There could be a lot of good people, a lot of decent people, but to be truly great comes with great sacrifices. I mean, this man was a small spark plug of a man, but he was a a spiritual giant in my mind because he was artistic. He was an artistic giant. He was an artistic man. He was a big human being in terms of his humanity and his philanthropy and his talent. His talent was bigger than his body. You know, it was so outsized, and his generosity as well. If you get past all the gruffness and all the curse words, you find a beautiful human being at the core. I mean, you know, he was with his beloved sister Annie Abel, you know, for 60 plus years. And she passed away in 2011. He came on for 4 more years, almost 4 more full years. And yeah, but also he was the visionary behind the celebrated Southern Heritage Classic. You know, he co-founded that with Fred Jones. He used to work at Stacks with Mr. Abel. Matter of fact, they planned the whole thing, the Southern Heritage Classic, in Mr. Abel's house, literally on his couch. And because Mr. Abel also was a college band director as well as high school band director, he had like a vast network throughout the nation. You know, so he was able to connect this because, you know, he was also along a Tennessee State University. So he was able to put this together, but he never got the proper credit for doing so. He actually designed the logo for the Southern Heritage Classic as well. And he never got proper credit. And I was disappointed to find out that Fred Jones, who went on Facebook to say how great Mr. Abel was, that he was the greatest high school band director the city of Memphis ever produced or seen, they did not give no any type of tribute to Mr. Abel this past Southern Heritage Classic, just months after he passed away. He was not properly given tribute for what he done in order to bring that cultural event to light. So I just want to give him proper credit, you know, in my somewhat type of tribute, eulogy, whatever you want to call it. And I think that's about it because I just wanted to say that, Mr. Abel, we love you madly. And thank you for all you done, because like I said, he was a great man and his family had to pay the cost for that. You know, there's a lot of great men in history and women through history whose families were the casualties for their greatness. They were sacrificed at the altar. But I say this to say that even Mr. Abel's family, you tell the greatness of a tree by the fruit it bears. His family is a beautiful family. You know, they turn out to be consummate professionals, college educated, productive citizens of our society, truly giving back and caring. So, you know, I know it might have been hard for them growing up with somebody like Mr. Abel, but he loved his kids. And you could tell, you know, in the pride they taken, you know, honoring their father and, you know, and telling people how great of a man he was. You know, he might have been hard, but it's because he had standards. And that's all I can say about that, you know. But look at his beautiful family. Look how they productive. His beautiful granddaughter, you know, turned tennis pro. I mean, you tell a greatness of a tree by the fruit it bears. And you look at the fruit. So with that said, I think that is all I can say right now about Mr. Abel. I got some great things coming up to either further amplify his legacy. And also, he was one of the first recipients of the Jimmy Lunsford Legacy Award. So that was an honor that I was able to give him that, because he really was very appreciative of that honor. And it was a blessing for me to be able to give him that award. It was truly an honor for me to be honored by him, that he accepted the award. And so it meant a lot to me. And so, like I said, the best is yet to come. Keep producing and pushing. We love you madly, Mr. Abel. You will never be forgotten as long as there's a person playing music and teaching music. And thank you so much for believing in me. And there's one of my tribute from about 5 years ago to the one and only Mr. Emerson Abel Jr. And you're rocking with Brother Ron at We All Be. And the best is yet to come. So, moving on, we're going to play some more tributes. I want to play one from the one and only Thaddeus Matthews, aka the cussing pastor. Y'all know him as the cussing pastor. But no, Thaddeus Matthews was interesting, or is an interesting person, because I didn't know he was a talented trumpet player in high school. According to Mr. Abel, he was a brilliant trumpet player. But he moved on from the trumpet, and he has a very brassy mouth, very colorful character, but truly a Memphis original and a media iconoclast. He also spoke at Mr. Abel's funeral 5 years ago, over 5 years ago. I can't believe it's been over 5 years ago. And I want to play his eulogizing of Mr. Emerson Abel for you all. And thank you all, like I said, for being patient, for tuning in during this Christmas Eve to honor one of our great ones, one of our great music educators, Mr. Emerson Abel. So without further ado, let's get the cussing pastor to weigh in on the legacy of the late, great Mr. Emerson Abel. And you are watching We All Be News Free Dixie for the 21st century.
You are watching We All Be News Radio, News Free Dixie for the 21st century. I'm Thaddeus Matthews.
There was no one like Emerson Russell Abel Jr. No one could articulate like Emerson Abel Jr. If you ever had a conversation with Emerson, you know that was going to be some fine articulating in the conversation. I can remember way back in the 70s, putting on the gold and blue uniform that many of us at Manassas wore. When we had pride in our school system, and I would walk from New Chicago, and others would walk from Stellafield and Bellwater with our uniforms on, because they had to be clean, because if you came to the parade with a dirty uniform on, Emerson would not allow you to participate. But you know, Emerson was a perfectionist. That was a sign in the band room, in the old band room, that said, there is no substitute for the right note. And it seemed like whenever you would hit a wrong note, even if you were marching down Old Main Street or whenever you were marching in New Orleans in that 20-mile parade, Emerson Abel would hear the wrong note, and Emerson would come and tap you on the shoulder and say, play that blankety blank right. Get your blankety blank over here. That was Emerson. But you know, after high school, that Emerson Abel and I would be friends. You don't know when a friend, your teachers after, and it's been a long time since Manassas High School. But Emerson Abel became my friend. He was a great supporter of the things that I do. And Emerson would call me and say, man, keep educating them, blankety, blankety, blank, blankety, blankety, blanks. Well, y'all know him, so don't act like y'all didn't. It would be Emerson if we did. I think I even got some cuss words from Emerson. But he would call me and he would say, Dad, I need to talk. And I was disabled, I got to call you back because I knew that once I got into a conversation, that conversation was going to be at least 45 minutes long. And no matter what I told him I had to do, he just skipped over what I had to do and kept on talking. But you know, I don't believe that those who live close to God, that death comes as a surprise to me. I think that God is still so good and he is so merciful that even in our dying hour, God gives us an opportunity to straighten some things out. Last Thursday, I was sitting in my office and I got a call from Latanya. She was at the hospital with Emerson. Emerson watched my program every day he was at home. He was sending me artwork. Y'all do know he was an artist too. He was sending me artwork about various politicians, and I can't mention some of what was on some of those cartoons that he sent me. But when he called me last week, that was a difference in the voice of Emerson Abel. Abel called, and Abel liked having his own way. I don't care what it was, he wanted to have his way. And even in death, Emerson Abel had his way. He said, Dad, I don't want to die in this blanket. He said, I want to go home to die. I don't want to die here. And if I got to die somewhere, I don't want to die here. He said, but Dad, you keep educating. You keep doing what you're doing. I laughed at it. And then he got into a series of, he said, Dad, I mean that. You keep on fighting. And I said, Emerson, I'm going to do just that. Emerson, that particular night, got sick. Emerson knew what was about to happen. He knew that there was a transition that was about to take place. He knew that his time in this world was about to expire, but he had made up his mind that he was not going to die in that blanket that he was in. And God, in his mercy, allowed Emerson Abel to die somewhere else. My friend, my mentor, rest well, my friend. But you know, I know that he's up there with Gabriel now, and Gabriel, you better watch out. There's a real horn player.
And that was the one and only the cousin pastor paying homage to the late great Emerson Abel Jr., one of the greatest, if not the greatest, high school band director the city of Memphis has ever produced in the Lunsford tradition. His hero, his music hero, was Jimmy Lunsford. So, yeah, that was Thaddeus Matthews. Y'all know him as the cousin pastor or pastor. He was a student of Mr. Emerson Abel, I guess at Manassas back in the day. I know Mr. Abel told me he was a great trumpet player. Really enjoyed Thaddeus. Thaddeus, very talented brother who was born on April Fool's Day. But Thaddeus is nobody's fool, as y'all may know. He acts a fool, but he's nobody's fool, as far as I know. But this is We All Be, the 2020 Jimmy Lunsford Demery Festival virtual online edition. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Sister Duckworth, and everybody else who's tuning in. We were talking about Mr. Emerson Abel. We're paying homage to the brother. Shout out to Rochelle. Thank you for the donation. Thank everybody who's been donating, not just donating, but paying dues, helping us keep this program going, this platform jumping. And yeah, we paying homage to Mr. Emerson Abel Jr., who was a dear friend of mine, a true Jegna to me, and a righteous ancestor for the last 5 years, and a guy who really supported me in terms of trying to bring honor to Jimmy Lunsford and to Memphis music and Memphis musicians. And what can I say, man? He's been on my mind heavily. Like I said, 2020 has been a tough year for me. I didn't even realize how many people that I knew that checked out this year. Very good people not all just necessarily COVID related, but just dealing with the anxieties and stresses of life. Very extreme year. So this is Sankofa time to look back towards the past for inspiration for the future. And I'm planting seeds. This is the seed planting season. Like a lot of festivals were canceled this year, a lot of live music events and stuff, things were canceled. And I was thinking about maybe I should postpone the Jimmy Lunsford Jamboree Festival celebration. But I said, the hell with that. Not only will I not postpone it, but I'll make it twice as long as normal. Because normally it's just a week celebration, right? 7 days. I doubled that to 14 days so far. And my thing was to get out some type of programming related to Jimmy Lunsford and black music every day for 14 straight days. So this is day number 7, I believe. So far, so good. Let's go close to yeah, 7. 7, installation out of 14. So thank y'all for tuning in. And what is going on? That is the thing. Like I said, people say, well, what about the regular broadcasts of Run Around that you don't do? All that is coming. Like I said, I've been doing a lot of marathon stuff back to back to back over the weekends. I got some interesting things lined up this weekend. But also, I really believe that we got to really start utilizing these platforms for more than just gossip and innuendo and junk food. We got to start feeding food for the soul that nourishes, that encourages critical thinking and things of that nature. So I'm gonna play another tribute. I got a couple of tributes lined up to Mr. Emerson, Abel. And that's why it's important to have black media tell these stories, like the new black media, right? We got to tell our stories. If we don't tell their stories, the ancestors get no glory. If we don't tell their stories, the ancestors get no glory. Now let me see. Play Dr. John Bass. He also was a disciple in his own way of Mr. Emerson Abel Jr. Mr. Emerson Abel gave him the marching orders on how to honor Memphis musicians. Like Mr. Abel, if he knew that you were serious about being a person that's going to pay tribute and honor to the Memphis music history and do it the right way, he would take the time to put together a package and a list of Memphis musicians, some well known, some not so well known. He'll write it in his handwriting, the list, provide you with information, resources, and basically give you your marching orders. Like he was in a band, he's a band director. He will give you your marching orders by sending you a package with information about Memphis music history and tell you all the musicians that need to be honored. Because Mr. Emerson Abel, not only did he help start the very popular, I hope I got my microphone's on. Man, I be having long days. Not only did he help start the Southern Heritage Classic in his living room. See, Fred Jones used to work at Stax too, but I'm saying he also helped start what is now known as the Beale Street Music Festival. He was one of the original organizers of the Beale Street Music Festival. A lot of the greatest festivals that Memphis is renowned for were started by black people. Black folks helped start the Memphis in May stuff, like the Memphis International Barbecue Competition. Black people started it. Like I told you, it was a black man from here, from Shelby County, from unincorporated Memphis, Henry Perry, who's the father of modern barbecue. Memphis is the birthplace of modern America. This is not just bragging. I'm giving y'all facts to back that up. You understand what I'm saying? It's not just bragging. It's a very powerful cultural place. It's like that movie and play, August Wilson's Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. They kept on talking about Memphis, going to Memphis. Memphis is a mecca, one of Black America's meccas, along with places like Chicago, Harlem. Memphis was known as the Harlem of the South. Beale Street, man, was like a black person's paradise. All right. So let me without further ado, let me get into Dr. John Bass. He's director of the Mike Curb Institute at Rhodes College. He is truly a person that believes in trying to reclaim the narrative and give black musicians their rightful place in that narrative. So without further ado, let's get into what Dr. John Bass had to say about the late great Emerson Abel Jr. And this is We All Be News Free Dixie for the 21st century. We love you, Madly.
This is Judge Joe Brown, and we're listening to We All Be News. News Free Dixie for the 21st century.
Y'all be honored to have on educator extraordinaire, Dr. John Bass, who also was a 2012 We All Be Artist of the Year Award recipient, and also a colleague and collaborator with the late great Mr. Emerson Abel. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm great. I just want to get your take on Mr. Abel, your thoughts about him, the passing of this band leader.
Well, I mean, it's the passing of a legend, really. I mean, this is the, passing of the torch, really, sort of moment. When I moved to Memphis in 2000, it was moved here as a jazz musician, started to get indoctrinated into the culture and what it meant to be a Memphis musician, and learn about these things. The name that kept coming up was Emerson Abel, and then you learn about the students he trained, you learn about him as a player, him as a composer and as an arranger, but he was sort of the common thread among all of, Memphis music. And he is really one of the linchpins, I think, of the Memphis music story, and without him, all this stuff that we think about just wouldn't be there. And, it's from, he comes from a long line, and learning the story about Manassas is just incredible. I mean, it starts with Jimmy Lunsford, goes on, through W.T. Daniels and Ozzie Horn and Matt Garrett, and then it's Emerson Abel. And he was there, longer pretty much than anybody else. And, I don't know. It's just hard to state how much of an impact he had on not only Memphis music around the world. I mean, everybody who loves Isaac Hayes, right? Emerson Abel was the reason for a lot of that music to be there. So I'm just honored to be here today.
It's an honor to have you. I feel like you're a part of his living legacy as well. I want to ask you how he influenced you as a musician, as an educator, your approach to dealing with students as well as your music.
No, that's a good thing. So when I became the head of the Curve Institute at Rhodes College, and our mission was to really dig into this Memphis music story and figure out, peel back some of these layers and learn some of these stories that were there. It became important that we, really find sort of some of these kernels and these stories that hadn't been told as much. And one of the first people we brought in with Preston Lauterbach to do a panel discussion was Emerson Abel. It was really important for us to have his story told in a large way. And we were honored to have him on campus a couple times. So we brought him back for another panel discussion. And we were really honored to be able to sponsor the brass note on Beale Street that's in his name. That was something that was just so important to us. This was a missing part of the story, and we wanted to, all the musicians know about it, right? You can't talk to a musician in town who doesn't know the story about Emerson Abel, but it was important for the college to have that story told to more people, and for more people to realize just how important this man was.
Do you have a particular Emerson Abel story you'd like to share, like a favorite story or an interesting story?
The thing about him, I mean, there's so many. So many people can tell more. There's so many great personal stories, but the thing that struck me was that whenever he got an opportunity to speak, whenever we gave him an opportunity to speak, whenever we hear him speak, in sort of a public setting, he would always use that opportunity to bring attention to the other Memphis musicians who were not getting the recognition they needed. so whenever he was there, he would pull out this list. He always carried, I don't know how long he carried that list around with him, but he had this list of musicians that were not getting their due. And so whenever he was in essence getting his due, whenever he was on stage, when we were honoring him, he used that opportunity to make sure that everybody there knew about these other people that were just as that he thought were just as important, that were not getting the recognition. And so, we've worked off that list. I said, well, I go back. I have a copy of that list in my office, and when I'm thinking about interesting people or the people in the Memphis music story that need to be told, I'll go back to his list. So what will Mr. Emerson, what will Mr. Abel say, and then go back to that. So he taught me so much. He taught our students so much, and I hope the people that were able to sort of attend the things learned as much as we did. Because I'm a smarter person. I'm a better Memphian for knowing Emerson Abel.
I definitely agree with that. I want to ask you one more question, because it seemed like he was a band director in Mississippi schools for 32 years. It's like when he was the band director, it was a certain golden era. Like he was a part of this golden era, this movement. But now you look at the state of music education in the country in general, and Memphis in particular. Do you think we could ever recapture or even surpass what Emerson Abel Jr. was able to do?
I don't know. I think that's a really good metaphor on the state of a lot of things in education right now. You probably could say the same thing about, the math teachers and the English teachers back then who were inspiring people in a different way today. I think just the whole culture is a little bit different. I think we can capture that again. I think kids are just thirsting for that kind of thing again. They want to be part of it. You hear all these students, they felt like they were part of something bigger than them because they were in his band. And I don't know if that can come from the schools. I hope it can. I hope we can figure this out and rekindle it. But I think just the most important thing is to find situations where kids can feel that important and that connected to something bigger than themselves in music and in other things.
And one last question: you have anything to say to the family of Emerson Abel Jr.?
No. My thoughts and prayers are with all of you at this moment. I was blessed to have known him for the short time I did. He made a huge impact on my life, and I know he did for so many other people in a much greater way than he did for me. So just we'll miss him.
Thank you, brother John Bass, and the words of great Duke Ellington. We love you, madly. Keep on producing and pushing.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah.
That was Dr. John Bass, right? Director of Mike Curb Institute and a disciple in his own way of the legacy of the late, great Emerson Abel Jr. We are a part of his living legacy. A lot of times, I got a tab open. Live stuff. But a lot of times, people don't understand what a living legacy may be. You may have children, but they may not be the people that's going to carry on your God work, your life's work, your purpose-driven work. It may be a stranger or a person that you mentored along the way, like your students. Like Mr. Abel had a lot of students that he helped, to achieve not only in the band room, but also in the classroom. Like I said, a lot of his students went on to colleges with full rides because of their music education that was, helped along by Mr. Emerson Abel Jr. He sent a lot of black people to college through music. So, but at the same time, sometimes your family gets neglected. I hate to say the word neglected, but you could be a great man, but not necessarily be the greatest, I guess, in terms of being there for your family on an emotional level. If that make any sense? Like Mr. Abel was definitely a great provider. He has 3 beautiful children, 2 sons and a daughter. All 3 of them are great in terms of that's good people, professionals, doctor, insurance, salesman, agent owner, police detective. So these people are very productive citizens of society. But dad was everybody's dad. You understand? Like sometimes they wanted their dad just to be at home, to be there for them. And he was there for everybody. And it happens a lot of times. Dick Gregory, for example, he had 10 children, 11 in all, but that were raised by his wife. And he was honest about him not being there for his children, that he chose the movement over his family. He's honest. He was honest about that. That he chose the movement over his family. That his wife Lil raised the children. Cause he'll tell me, Ron, I don't even know him like that. I don't know these people. I mean, it's like he's joking, but he's not joking because he wasn't really there for his family like he was there for the movement. And those are sacrifices that are made. Mr. Abel provided for his family in terms of food, clothing, shelter. They got the best education. You know, one son's a surgeon, medical doctor, professor. One son, insurance agent, own his own insurance company. Daughter, police detective. High achieving people, but they would tell you, hey, you know, we want our father, you know, a lot of times you do things to try to please your father. Like they try to play instruments to get him more involved in acknowledging them. But it's complicated, man. It's complicated. Yes, sister Duckworth, yes. There are sacrifices that are made, we benefit from it as humanity does, but a lot of times the family had to pay that price. Like you think about Malcolm family. Malcolm was killed in front of his family. His wife was pregnant with his twin daughters. He had 4 of his daughters, basically 6, 2 in the womb, but his whole family was present for his assassination at the age of 39. He left his family at the age of 39 without a father, a family full of daughters. And those relationships with the parents are some of the most important relationships you ever have in life because they are the foundation for your relationships. Like a woman's relationship with her father is the foundation for how she deals with men in her life. A man's relationship with his mother is the foundation on how he deals with women in his life. So, I mean, it's tough, man. It's tough to be born to somebody with a purpose that's bigger than just raising their family. So I want to give a shout out to the Abels for, the sacrifices that were made in order for this man to do the work he did. Even his wife had to make sacrifices, but moving on, I'm just doing everything on top of my head, but moving on to some more tributes so we can wrap it up. It'd be funny because a lot of times I start these things, I think I will be a little bit under an hour, and then it goes beyond an hour. I don't plan them like this. It just do it. It do what it do. But I want to play this. It's like really one of the first ladies of Memphis music. She's a legend in her own right. Brilliant voice, a tireless advocate for our people. Always giving, always caring, always showing up when it matters. One of my favorite people on the planet, Sister Earline Taylor. She is truly, in the words of Duke Ellington, beyond category. She was our 2019 Jimmy Lunsford Jamboree Festival Homecoming Court Queen. And she is truly royalty uncrowned. Great woman, artivist, and a friend, a dear friend of Mr. Emerson, Abel Jr. I want to share her thoughts about the great man in her own words from her. So, as y'all know, this is We All Be News Free Dixie for the 21st century. Thank you for joining. Brandy, greetings, peace, love, and blessings. Yes, Sister Duckworth, I agree. But, we are in troubling times. The Black family must find a way to work it out. I mean, we need each other. Like I always tell people, the Holy Trinity is the Black man, woman, and child. And we got to get back on the same page. Because we ain't going to make it without each other. All this, I could do without a man and I don't need a woman, all this stuff. No, man, we got to get back on code. We're not really on code. I'm going to talk about that on another show soon. Some of the thoughts, 'cause I know y'all like that other stuff. Y'all like that politicized, all that hot mess stuff. Sometimes we get into and We All Be, but it's a part of the human condition. But yes, Black fathers matter, basically. So yeah, let's get into Sister Earline Taylor talking about the late great Emerson Abel Jr. And this is We All Be News Free Dixie for the 21st century.
This is Judge Joe Brown, and we're listening to We All Be News. News Free Dixie for the 21st century.
Memphis music legend, Sister Earline Taylor. She just got through singing a wonderful, beautiful rendition of Precious Lord. The one and only Brother Emerson, Abel Jr. How you doing today?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm great. I just want to get your takes on the legacy of Brother Emerson Abel, because you got a unique perspective on this unique individual.
Well, now, Mr. Abel, you know, I wasn't in his band. I sang in the choir. But when we did the annual show every year, I was one of the star singers along with Isaac Hayes and different ones. And I was one that made costumes also. But I went away, but when I came back, I was singing jazz, and Mr. Abel just took right on up to me. And just lucky, I heard them saying in there that all the Joe's been cussed out. You know, I was one of the few that he never cussed me out. He said, "No, you the baby." He said, "No, I ain't gonna cuss you out, baby." But Mr. Abel was a little bitty giant that was just so big. I mean, he was just big to everybody. Even though he did all the cussing, because I cussed pretty good myself. But he was just wonderful. And you could not say no to him. And I'm one like that. I don't let you say no to me. But Mr. Abel was one of those guys that's a steady turning wheel at all times. And that was just him. So who could ever forget that? It's an unforgettable person.
Do you have any interesting Abel story you want to share with us? I know you got probably quite a few in your library collection.
Well, no, he told me about a story. He told me about a story when he took his kids to play. You know, they would always win. And this time when he went, this white guy called him. He said, "When you gonna bring them black birds up here?" He said, "What are black birds?" He said, "People's calling my kids black birds." He said, "I took my pistol out." I said, "Mr. Abel, you didn't shoot?" He said, "No, but I was getting ready to. They had to hold me down." I said, "Well, I'm glad you didn't shoot them folks, boy, because you wouldn't be here sitting up here today." That was just one of the many stories. He would tell you so many stories, but he was just an excellent guy.
What do you think was his biggest contribution to the Memphis sound, the Memphis music legacy?
Well, Mr. Abel, with him being a union, he was part of the musicians' union, you know. So all of the big stars that came in, you know, in order to play for their gig, you'd have to be a unionized person. But Mr. Abel is the one that found all of the musicians for all of the gigs. I don't care who called me, Tony Bennett, Nancy Wilson, whatever. He was the guy that would get you in. You know what I mean? And he just helped anybody. I don't know of anybody that he didn't help. You know what I'm saying? So that's good. That's it.
Okay, excellent. Do you have any thoughts or words you want to send to the family of Mr. Emerson Abel?
Oh, I just want them to keep strong. I know what we have. What we know about him out here in the street is something totally different at home. Well, look, my family ain't no different. My daddy was a preacher, and we couldn't go to the movies and the theaters, and we couldn't do this, and we had to wait till everybody else eat the food, and you get what was left over. But the stories that they told were kind of stories that I would tell about my family. But everybody thought my daddy was a perfect father, and I think that was the way they were supposed to look like to everybody, you know. But we all make it. We know the do's and the don'ts, and we show that in our families as well, you know, and you respect it. It is what it is. You can't change it. But nobody would never know that he was like that at what he did at the home. Give you an old bike and 2 TVs to get one.
That's hilarious.
But you would never know that.
Right.
I've never known him to be a spendthrift because I don't know that much about him in that way. All I do was involved with music, you know.
Right.
And he would do that fine art. Do you have any of his artwork?
I got some of his letter writing. The letters he wrote me, it's like works of art in itself. I mean, his
calligraphy is fabulous. But no, he's got some characters.
I see those too.
Characters.
I wish I got some of that art.
Well, wait a minute. It's a bunch of. It was somebody in there said they got a lot of it.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that. But I saw when he came to his house, he was able to do things with pen and shoe polish. Was incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, he was just an artist, though. He was not just a musician.
Yeah.
He was just an artist. That was he was a Renaissance man.
Well, with them saying that he was a swimmer.
Yeah, that was incredible.
That's too. Like Bill Hurd was an athlete.
But you know, they were in that black folks swim. Let's think about what happened in McKinney, Texas, though. He was able to learn how to swim back then.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let black folks in the swimming pool.
They wouldn't let him in.
No, he's still there.
But Bill Hurd was a athlete.
I heard about him too.
Yeah, but there's so much that we people are multi-talented.
Right.
And that's our problem is we are multi-talented. When they find out that, they can't put you in a corner.
That's right.
You can stereotype into one thing. You can't do that. You know?
Right.
So you just don't tell them everything you know how to do.
That's right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, I'm concerned. It's like the golden years. He was a part of something special in terms of music education in the city. It's like the golden years Mr. Abel served, and also people that came before Mr. Abel. And right now, it's like we're going backwards. It seems to me we're going backwards in music education.
Well, of course.
Can we ever regain what they had and surpass it?
The only way we can do that is we got to start with the little children. Because the ones that's up there, they're bitter because they haven't gained what they thought that they should have gained.
Right.
And I understand it. But you got to start with the little kids and work up. And that takes a long time. But, you know, you start. Once you get it started, it'll go like wildfires because the kids will get other kids involved. And then the kids will bring the adults in. And it'll be different from the adults that we have now. The young ones, they don't have any pride about that history and culture. If you don't teach them about that history and culture, they still don't see no need for it. And my thing is getting them to understand their history and their culture. And that's where we got to do. We got to get in the schools. But if you don't have it, in the schools, you need to do it in the church. You need to do it in the house. You need to do it everywhere that you can. And they'll demand that it's in the school. It has to start somewhere. And the only thing I can see is it start at school. You know what I'm saying?
And Sister Earline Taylor, the words the great Fidelity, we love you, MADLY, and keep on producing.
Thank you, my darling. I'm gonna see you this evening.
And that was the one and only Sister Earline Taylor, truly beyond category, a queen in her own right, true Memphis music royalty. I gotta apologize for the cackling hens in the back. It's like they got louder as soon as it's just funny how black folks be doing stuff subliminally. But anyway, it is what it is. And I'm glad, like she said, you gotta raise the children right. You know, if you want to save the children, you got to raise the children. And Baba Dick Gregory, like he said, if you want them to go to college, you know, on a full ride, start them on music instruments young. You know, start them playing instruments and stuff when they're young, singing, whatever. They get their full ride to college. At least they was able to do it back in the day. But like Mr. Emerson, Abel sent a lot of black kids to school, to college because of music, training them in music. But like she said, black people, we're very talented. It's like if you go to Paul Robeson, this man could speak over 20 different languages, was one of the first black All-American football players, was a lawyer, was a great actor, phenomenal singer, could do it all. You look at Zora Neale Hurston, Dr. Zora Neale Hurston. She's not just a writer. She was a scientist, an anthropologist, could do it all. Catherine Dunham. Let's go on and on and on. We're very multifaceted and talented people. We really are the envy of the world because we taught the world. And we forgot that we knew that we knew. We taught the world. Like I always talk about, you know, you look at, like I said, Hank Williams Sr., the king of country music, was taught how to do music by a black man, Rufus T. Top Payne. You look at even George Gershwin. Yeah, the George Gershwin. You know his music hero was James Reese Europe. He used to listen to James Reese Europe play at a nightclub in Harlem. He'd be outside listening to James Reese Europe play on the piano at Baron Wilkes nightclub. Or Wilkie's, whatever you call it. I see these names are interesting. Wilkie's, Wilkes, whoever. It was a black man, right? Also, his music teacher was a black man named Lucky Roberts, a stride piano player from Philadelphia who became a multimillionaire through real estate in the New York area. So it was a black man, Lucky Roberts, that taught George Gershwin how to play piano. Yeah, the George Gershwin. Yeah, Rhapsody in Blue, I believe. That George Gershwin. Porgy and Bess. Did he do Porgy and Bess? Y'all can correct me. I ain't gonna look that up. But I'm saying behind every white man is a great black man that he stole, learned from. Nearest Green with Jack Daniels. Black people, we powerful people. It reminded me of that movie, The Legend of Bagger Vance. Like with Will Smith and Matt Damon. You had this black dude walking in the middle of Georgia teaching this white boy how to play golf. And you know that stuff, he had to be a magical Negro. That's Georgia back in the day where they were lynching black folks every day, day and a half. Georgia's on my mind. Georgia's on my mind right now, right? Georgia, all eyes on Georgia. Georgia is on our mind. But you got this magical Negro type of stuff with black people. We're magical, but we can bleed. If you shoot us or stab us, we will bleed. But we are some magical, special people. So, yeah, the frustration is real. To be that talented and that brilliant, but to be limited by a system, by a society that does not accept or embrace your whole humanity, that is a level of frustration. But at the same time, we got to start looking inside ourselves to actualize what we want outside of ourselves. Everything we need is within ourselves, within our grasp. That energy, people talking about energy, I'm talking about the inner God. This is our temple. That energy, that Christ spirit resides in each and every one of us. That Masonic spirit resides in all of us. Your words create worlds. When we rap, like I always tell people, look, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, you will never mistake them for some gangsters, right? Right? They're actors, right? They're almost 80 years old. Tupac dead at 25. Biggie dead at 24, because we can't act like the white folks act. Our soul is different. We got a different universe soul connection. You understand? See, we talking about death around the corner, death coming for us. You look at Notorious B.I.G. His first album was Ready to Die, right? Great album, classic. Second album, Life After Death. When did it come out? After he was dead. Could not even enjoy his greatest success because he was already worm food or in an urn. They cremated Biggie. They cremated Tupac, and they said they smoked his ashes, right? Tupac constantly talking about death around the corner, talking about dying young, and he dies young. Your words create worlds, black people. Look at the rappers now, all of them dying young. I heard a song about Juice WRLD that basically prophesies about his early death. It's like a love letter, a ghost letter to a woman. I said, man, a lot of these rappers I don't hear till they die. And a lot of them be very talented. Like Pop Smoke. I didn't hear about Pop Smoke until he was popped and smoked. And it's a damn shame, because Pop Smoke would have been a big star right now. I'm just listening to some of his music and his album. It's just a travesty, man. But his name, Pop Smoke. They popped and smoked him. Or you think about King Von. Think about the Asian doll girl. Talking about they like Bonnie and Clyde, right? They're like, she talking about, I can't be with a man unless he got 3 bodies on. He killed about 3 people. Allegedly, King Von killed about 3 people, right? And then somebody got King Von. It's sad, man. But anyway, without further ado, let me play one more tribute to Mr. Emerson Abel from one of his disciples, his proteges, the great Howard Grimes, the Memphis Bulldog of the Memphis sound. Howard Grimes is an amazing man, very humble cat. He was a professional musician when he was preteen. When he was like 12 years old, he was the drummer for Stax. When it was Satellite Records, when it was known as Satellite Records back in the day, he was the session drummer. And he was about 12 years old. So he was a prodigy. And Mr. Abel was his master teacher. He learned from Mr. Abel. And Howard Grimes been going strong for decades, right? They call him the Memphis Bulldog. He's very tenacious, very consistent with that beat. Howard Grimes worked for High, was part of the High Rhythm Band, the High Rhythm section. You know, all them hits with Willie Mitchell, who produced Al Green. So Howard Grimes on a lot of them hits. He's on that Andy Peoples. I can't stand the rain. I can't stand the rain. He's on that. He's the drummer on that. Very humble dude, man. He lived right in Soulsville, right near where Stax used to be, where it's now known as the Stax Museum. He's not that far away from that. Good brother. So much information about our history, living history, a very important part of the Memphis sound. This is him paying tribute to his Jegna, Emerson Abel Jr. And how he talks and stuff like that, the way he speaks, very rhythmic. You know, he's an interesting dude, man. Just one of a kind. So let's hear Mr. Howard Grimes, the Memphis Bulldog, talk about his Jegna, the late great Emerson Abel Jr. He is truly a keeper of the sound, of the Memphis sound. And this is We All Be News Free Dixie for the 21st century. Thank you all for being patient and for listening. And the best is yet to come.
This is Judge Joe Brown, and we're listening to We All Be News. News Free Dixie for the 21st century.
So I'm right here with Blues Great, the one and only, the Memphis Bulldog, drummer extraordinaire, like no other, brother Howard Grimes. We're here at the wake for brother Emerson Abel, a distant teacher of yours, correct? Yeah. So I just want to get your thoughts. I know you ain't gonna be able to make it to the funeral, but I just want to get your thoughts about your friend, Mr. Abel.
Mr. Abel was one of a kind, man. He was the master of the Memphis sound. He was my teacher for 4 years at Manassas High School. I played my first gig with Mr. Abel at the Rivermont Club over on Lamar years ago. Mm-hmm. From there, he brought me to Satellite Records. He was letting me come out of school to do recording sessions. He always looked at my career. He always kept me close. Mr. Abel was one of a kind. And a friend of mine that loved Mr. Abel as well as I did, his name is Preston Lonabar, which I'm writing a book. And he's working on the book that Mr. Abel was the cause of me through Preston Lonabar. And we were there the last time we saw him, not knowing that he was going to leave us that particular next day. We was there that Saturday, and Floyd Newman called me that Sunday morning, told me Mr. Abel had passed. So it's a great loss. It's another soldier gone. But we have to carry the torch on. I know where he's at, and I'm comfortable with it. And all I can say is it's been a blessed day to be here today, see some of his family, and some of my classmates that I hadn't seen in years. So I like to say, bless all that I've seen. I thank God for all that I have met. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Jesus' name.
Thank you, Brother Howard Grimes. The words of the great Duke Ellington. We love you madly. Keep on producing and pushing, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right. And that was the one and only Memphis Bulldog, Howard Grimes. Very humble cat, man. He actually was commissioned by Yoko Ono, John Lennon's widow, to contribute to a album, I guess, in tribute to drummers, original compositions. Be forgetting to close out some of these tabs, but yeah, I mean, very humble cat, man. Like I said, a lot of hits with Al Green. Did the and Peoples, I can't stand the rain. That stuff, that's him on there. So I mean, Memphis music is amazing. Memphis is like, you walk outside, everything's so musical, rhythmic. You know, there's a rhythm to everything. Everybody got talent, but you know, the sad thing about it is, a lot of us don't believe in ourselves and our ability to utilize our talents to really change the narrative. So it takes people like me, the creatively maladjusted, to bring some type of attention to that. And I really don't mind being made a fool of for the right cause. So guess I'm gonna close it out. I'm gonna read this is the obituary that I got 5 years ago. Now, we call it the funeral program that I got 5 years ago when I went to Mr. Abel's funeral. Beautifully well done. A lot of great photos in it. You know, Mr. Abel was an interesting dude, man. He was a great man. Mr. Abel, him and his people. I like this picture right here. He's a teenager with the crown on. He really was a prince, and he grew up to be a king. So I'm gonna read. I guess I could read his. You call it his bio, and then I'm gonna close it out. And I want to thank everybody for being very patient tonight. I know it's Christmas for a lot of y'all, or whatever y'all celebrate. Happy holidays. I'm in Central Time Zone, Memphis time, Chicago time. So it's still Thursday here, but some of y'all celebrating, I guess, Friday. But to me, you should celebrate life every day. You know what I'm saying? We should resurrect the memories of our loved ones, people that are truly the righteous ancestors. Keep them close, learn from them, from their triumphs as well as their mistakes and missteps. But know that they are people that was able to achieve in spite of their shortcomings. And Mr. Abel is no exception, you know. So I'm gonna read a little bit of him, then I'm gonna close it out. And thank you all for being patient. Yeah, the Cotton Jubilee photos, exactly what it was. That's right. You know your stuff, sister. Black folks had some pride back then. People always talking about how Jim Crow was for black people. Black folks were excelling back then. You had some of the best schools in the country were black schools. Black businesses like insurance companies, banks and stuff. Black folks were doing their thing. When we are forced by a system to deal with each other, we could deal with each other. When they force us to deal with each other, you know. So yeah. So thank y'all so much for listening, tuning in. It's for tuning in. But let me read this obituary. And we'll go from there. Obituary, but I guess you call it obituary or eulogy or just his life story, a short version of it. I mean, Mr. Abel visiting him in hospice. They call it rehabilitation, but now I know it's known as hospice. Like how they saying people with COVID, we're gonna send them to rehabilitation. That means hospice. Gonna stick a ventilator down your throat. Run, run, run. I'm just joking, but I'm not joking. You understand what I'm saying? I'm joking, but I'm not joking. The games they play, man. But Mr. Abel, life well lived. Right on. Well lived life. read this from the program. Emerson Russell Abel Jr. was born on October 21st, 1930 in Memphis, Tennessee, the first of two sons born to Emerson Abel Sr. and Annie Mae Young Abel. However, the legacy of this man of humble beginnings, who some say was ahead of his time, will be felt by generations to come. What manner of man was this? A husband, father, visionary, musician, composer, arranger, mentor, teacher, band director, activist, advocate, humanitarian, trailblazer, athlete, and soldier, but many believe he was also an unsung hero. Unsung hero was probably not a label Emerson would have embraced, but many fellow musicians, music enthusiasts, and historians, parents, friends, and family beg to differ. They believe he was an unsung hero who touched the lives of students, parents, and fellow musicians worldwide with his musical genius, affinity for the common man, and his innovative ideas, both musically and intellectually. As a youngster, he showed talent in music, art, and sports. He was a creative and precocious child who babysat younger children, built a mini hideaway under his house where only the chosen could visit, and enjoy swimming and baseball. Emerson was a people person who connected with young and old alike. He joined Collins Chapel CME Church as a youngster and remained a member. Emerson attended Manassas High School from the 1st through the 12th grade, graduating in 1948. As a student, he was one of the original members of the Rhythm Bombers, who performed in cities in Arkansas, Tennessee, and Mississippi. While still a high school student, he played with many of the local professionals who he called Sidewalk University instructors. They taught me more than any band director or college professor through their experience and not college degrees. Upon graduation, he was awarded many scholarships to most of the historically Black colleges in both music and swimming. His choice of Tennessee State University, TSU, in Nashville will be influenced in part by close friends Nelson Jackson, Andrew Goodrich, Sam Ford, and Omar Robinson, whom also attended. The music scholarships were good, but the swimming team scholarships offered more money and less of a work-study program to supplement the scholarship. He was one of few to only be awarded 2 scholarships. During his sophomore year at TSU, he met the love of his life, Annie Lillian Perry of Knoxville, Tennessee. Once Annie arrived on campus, the couple was inseparable. Annie was a business major, and Emerson, although a music major, enrolled in almost as many business courses as Annie. I graduated with 216 hours, he said. The couple was married in 1952, and to this union, 3 children were born. As a college student, he became a member of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. Emerson also played with the 5 Royals, Fats Domino, Larry Birdsong, and Christian Cottrell on the recording of Blow Top Blues, in which he played a tenor saxophone solo, and was a backup player for saxophone players in the award-winning Tennessee State Collegians. His first job as band director was at Carver High School at Delray Beach, Florida, where he worked for 2 years. Band directors of Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood, and Pompano Beach often referred to his migratory workers as bean pickers or the log cabin band. Undaunted, under his directorship, they won many superior ratings and even caught the attention of Sunset Boulevard actress Gloria Swanson. She loved the band's rendition of B.B. King's Why I Woke Up This Morning. After observing local performances and parades, she supported the band with receipts of her Monday night performances. Outside his Florida classroom, Emerson played in a house band that included Julian Adderley, that's Cannonball Adderley, and Lady Doris at a club in Opelika, Florida, where he met R&B singers Sam and Dave, who performed during amateur night before eventually moving to Memphis. Then Uncle Sam came a-calling, and Emerson served for 2 years in the U.S. Army and played in the U.S. Army Band. After fulfilling his military obligation, he returned to the band room at his very own Manassas. During his tenure at Manassas, he earned a master's degree from TSU in 1959. And for the next 25 years, he changed lives, exposed students to all types of music that most never thought possible. He perfected procuring scholarships and offered an ongoing mentoring system for not only those students who pursued musical careers, but the students as well. Excellence was the order of the day with Emerson in motivating and reaching his students. There is no substitute for the right note, he would say, adding jokingly, if you play, you can stay. If you can't blow, you gotta go. Let me say it again. If you play, you can stay. If you can't blow, you gotta go. During his quarter of a century at Manassas, groundbreaking performances, including traveling to New Orleans, performing at Mardi Gras, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Missouri, Oklahoma at Six Flags, and political rally performances for President Lyndon B. Johnson, Hubert Humphrey, and governors of Tennessee, Louisiana, and Alabama. Ultimately, the band room of the newly constructed Manassas High was named in his honor in 2007. Emerson was quietly and methodically writing a proposal for the Extra Work, Extra Pay Committee to solicit pay for teachers such as coaches, band directors, majorette, and debate team coordinators who were responsible for the extra duties outside of the classroom, like football games, parades, and out-of-town trips, but were not being compensated. As a result, Emerson and other members of the committee were instrumental in procuring funds for extra work in the 1960s. During the 1960s, integration created its own set of problems for Mr. Abel. After 68% of his band students were reassigned to newly constructed Northside High School and formerly all-white Fraser High School, determined to keep his band intact, he advised the parents of his students to use a Firestone address where Manassas was located so that they could return. And according to Mr. Abel, the school board was none the wiser. In 1987, he retired from Westwood High School. There, he and his band students continued winning awards and accolades during performance, including reopening of Beale Street in 1982, band camp at Stillman College at Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and appearance by the Westwood Band during a CBS movie pilot, On Our Way, starring Harry Guardino and Janet Leigh, filmed in Lakeland, Tennessee in 1985. In addition, the Westwood Jazz Band provided music during the games of the Memphis Showboats, the professional football team. After numerous trips to Louisiana for Mardi Gras, the Inside the Mardi Gras program noted that Westwood Band from Memphis was the band to watch. Lastly, while at Westwood, the band was the first and last black band to lead off the Christmas parade during that period. My success as a band director was 3% my skills and 97% support of the students, family, teachers, parents, administrative, and custodial staff, said Emerson, reflecting on his 40-plus years as a band director. I remain forever grateful. The road was bumpy at times, but we were able to surpass the challenge, he said. Although the classroom was his platform for connecting and teaching the students, the stage was set for his involvement outside of the classroom. Once Maestros Incorporated was founded by Emerson, composing and arranging music for events followed, including Stax, High, Ardent, Shoe, and Malaco recording studios. The Isaac Hayes movement, along with composing the original soundtrack for movies Three, Tough Guys, Truck Turner, and Watch Stax. He rendered guest performances during the annual Andre Ford Memorial Jazz Festival and summer camp at Alabama State University, both in Montgomery, and as the guest artist and performer for the Arts and Entertainment Network channel for the program. Birmingham, the Magic City, and W.C. Haney Jazz Blues Festival with Birmingham Heritage Orchestra in Florence, Alabama, were music venues where his musical skills were in high demand. His musical resume also included performing with and playing for iconic musicians long before artists such as Lou Rawls, Gladys Knight, Tina Turner, Sarah Vaughan, Isaac Hayes, and Nancy Wilson, Phineas Newborn, and B.B. King became legends or household names. Additional musical accomplishments include musical note on Beale Street in 2012, Teacher of the Year sponsored by the Rotary Club in 1985, and of course, 2007 Jimmy Lunsford Lifetime Achievement Award or Legacy Award for dedicated excellence in music and music education. Emerson was inducted into the Alabama Jazz Hall of Fame 1984 and named Teacher of the Year by the Tri-State Defender newspaper in 1962, along with receiving the Outstanding Music Educators Award presented by the Jazz Society of Memphis during a tribute to Jimmy Lunsford in 1989. During his life of teaching Monday through Friday, playing gigs on the weekends, his family and golf were his refuge. He approached golf much like most of his endeavors with determination and eventual skill. Consequently, during the times he played golf, he won several flights according to age group and scores in the Sam Qualls Pioneers, Doofers, and Sickle Cell tournaments. The game of golf, which he loved and he began playing at age 12, yielded also 5 holes in one. In later years, he played golf with his friends who were also retired and were in their 70s and 80s. We call ourselves the Ben Gay group because at our age, by the time we left the golf course, we all smelled like Ben Gay, Emerson said. His wife, Annie Perry Abel, preceded him in death in 2011. He is survived by a daughter, Latonya D. Abel of Memphis, 2 sons, Antoine C. Abel of Nashville, Tennessee, and Emerson Abel III of Memphis, Tennessee, a brother, Whitman Abel of Memphis, a granddaughter, Emerald R. Abel of Memphis, 2 nephews, Eric Abel and Anthony Abel of Memphis, Tennessee, and a niece, Kiva Miller of Kansas City, Missouri. Missouri. 4 cousins, Denise Abel of Detroit, Dolores A. Crawford, Charlotte Beard, and Jane Evelyn Brown, all of Memphis, and close friends, Reverend and Mrs. William Smith, both of Memphis. So this was in his funeral program. I just wanted to read it to pay homage to him. Pretty impressive man. A life, a purpose-driven life. He lived a very full and productive life that had an impact. Like I said, it's sometimes be difficult to deal with that type of greatness if you related to it, especially if you are the son or daughter of a man of that magnitude or even a woman of that magnitude. You know, that's a large shadow. He was a short man in stature, but his achievements just created a large shadow for those to follow. So I want to thank you all for being patient with me today. I can't believe I almost went 2 hours with this thing. I thought surely it'd be maybe an hour program, but that's what happens when you do things off script and everything's about improvising. Yeah, Emerald Abel. Yeah, Mr. Abel is sorely missed, but like Dick Gregory, his energy, his presence is still around. He has more influence and power as an ancestor than he did as a human being. I mean, the way he moving. It's funny, him and Dick, they both died at 84. In the same year they was going to turn 85. And both of their birthdays is in October. Mr. Abel, October 21st. Dick Gregory, October 12th. And I've been blessed really to have some amazing black men be my Jegnas, man. I've been, Mr. Emerson Abel Jr., Dick Gregory, Judge DeArmy Bailey. Judge DeArmy Bailey, co-founder of the National Civil Rights Museum. You know, Judge DeArmy Bailey was a movie star, so to speak. He was the judge in The People versus Larry Flint. You know, when Woody Harrelson was playing Larry Flint, he was throwing like oranges or mangoes at the head of the judge. That was Judge DeArmy Bailey. And also he was the preacher in How Stella Got Her Groove Back. That was him. And he was a friend of mine. I knew him since I was a little kid, man, when I was volunteering with my mom as a tour guide when the Civil Rights Museum first opened in Memphis, the National Civil Rights Museum. So I've known him for most of my life, and he passed away 5 years ago. That same summer as Mr. Emerson Abel. That was a tough summer for me because I lost Mr. Emerson Abel Jr., Judge DeArmy Bailey, and my good friend, Sister Margaret Block from Cleveland, Mississippi. I've been blessed to meet some interesting people. They pour into me, they believe in me, they supported me, and they encouraged me. So, Mr. Abel, thank you so much for all you've done and continue to do as a righteous ancestor. And thank you for supporting what I've been trying to do in terms of getting recognition from Mr. Lunsford. You've been doing it longer than me. You did it longer than me. But I think our efforts have been bearing fruit, and I know that the best is yet to come. So I want to thank everybody out there for being patient. Annie Ruth Phillips, your mom. Did your mom go to Hamilton? My folks are Hamilton folks, Hamilton High School. You know, Memphis is an interesting place because one of the things people ask you is like, are you from here? And then what high school you go to? What high school you go to? That's what people want to know. Like Memphis folks, like, what high school you went to? Yeah, I guess like they could tell. Manassas. My mom was Hamilton, South Memphis. You know, there's a rivalry between North and South Memphis. It's an interesting thing. Memphis is a fascinating place. But yeah, DeArmy Bailey, yeah, she was close to DeArmy Bailey. DeArmy Bailey went to Booker T. Washington, though. He went to Booker T. Washington in South Memphis. But he was really a great man. You know, like they talking about recalling the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. DeArmy Bailey was a city council person out in Berkeley back in the day. Just during a day when it was real radical out there in California. He told me that Huey Newton tried to intimidate him into joining the Black Panther Party, but Judge wouldn't do it. Like he was trying to force Judge DeArmy Bailey to join the Black Panther Party. But DeArmy Bailey was so radical that they had to recall him. They had a recall on DeArmy Bailey from Berkeley City Council. How radical are you that Berkeley got to recall you? You know what I'm saying? Back in the day, they were doing all this stuff. So DeArmy Bailey was a fascinating man. He was truly a prince of a man, truly a king of a man. I mean, he just had a very royal presence about him. I'm Judge DeArmy Bailey. Brother Ron, amplify. Then will you tell me, you know, you want to get your message out there, you must amplify. Ron, amplify your message. Get it out there to the people. So, yeah, he was radical. Yeah, definitely was. Thank you so much for tuning in and receiving. If y'all missed anything, it's about 2 hours worth of stuff. Go in the playback. Yes, Merry Christmas to all. Whatever you said, radical and unique way. Yeah, DeArmy Bailey was one of a kind. And like he used to tell me all the time, he said, Brother Ron, life is a marathon. If you outlast them, they got to respect you. Because DeArmy Bailey was like an iconoclast. He was a black radical. Y'all didn't check out his memoirs. He wrote several books, but check out DeArmy Bailey books. But on that note, thank you all. Happy holidays to one and all. Know that the best is yet to come. Artemis still got a lot more content to put out there for you all in 2020. Trying to hit the right note heading into 2021. And I am excited. I hope you all are excited for all the right reasons. Keep on producing and pushing. But, support the movement. Cash App, your support, of course. You see it down here. R2C2H2. You could Google Pay or PayPal, R2C2H2 at gmail.com. You could Venmo it at R2C2H2. You can also Zelle now. Use email R2C2H2 at gmail.com or the phone number 901-299-4355. And you can wear Art of His Art. This is one of my Bird Lives, my tribute to Charlie Parker. I once asked Mr. Abel, who was the greatest musician you ever heard or seen in your life? He said it was Charlie Parker. When he was in the service, he went to Baltimore and he heard Charlie Parker play, and it changed his life. Kind of like, I heard Joe Thomas with Jimmy Lunsford Band. But he said Charlie Parker was the greatest musician he ever heard in his life. And Bird's dad's from Memphis, right? So you can go below the description box here if you're on YouTube and access the Teespring store, R2C2H2's place, or you can hang and buy and hang Art of His Art, frame it, makes for great gifts. R2C2H2.com is the website. So thank you all for listening, for giving of your energy. Thank you, sweet cheeks from Las Vegas. Thank you all. Peace and be well, Sister Duckworth. Yes, I had some amazing people, man. I've been blessed, man. I've been more than blessed with a lot of good people, father figure like people that took an interest in what I'm doing. And that's why I say I like to help people as much as I can, because I want to do more good than harm. To me, your legacy is not necessarily the people that you birth, like your biological children. It's about the people that are inspired and influenced by your example. And like I do these videos and stuff like that because, one day will be the last day for me. So at least I left something behind for people to get. Like, let's say if I help children, whatever, they can just access my dad's video archives and whatever else I got for them. So, the thing about it is to make, Malcolm X told somebody he wanted to make himself more dangerous dead than alive. Like, be more dangerous after death, because it's something to be able to move in a free way. You can't kill energy, right? You can't kill ideas. That's why we still talk about Fred Hampton Sr. And he said the zeitgeist of the times, the spirit of the times, the ancestors demand revolutionary change. It's coming. Well, are we ready? That's another story. So thank you all for listening. In the words of Duke Ellington, we love you madly. Keep on producing and pushing, and love on yourself and love on your people, because the best is yet to come. Enjoy your people, enjoy your company, be your best friend, your best confidant, your best fan. Me, myself, and I. So thank y'all so much. We love you madly. Keep on producing and pushing, and the best is truly yet to come.